Hello everyone, and welcome back to Great English Podcast. Today, we have an important and thought-provoking topic to discuss: illegal immigration in the USA. This issue touches many lives, shapes economies, and influences political debates across the world. In our conversation today, we want to break down this complex subject into clear, easy-to-understand language that will help English learners not only improve their language skills, but also gain insight into a real-world issue.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mark. As Catherine mentioned, illegal immigration is not just about laws or statistics, it encompasses human stories, personal journeys, economic challenges, and political controversies. Whether you're a learner looking to expand your vocabulary or someone interested in global issues, our conversation today aims to be both educational and engaging. We will cover a range of topics, including the meaning of illegal immigration, its underlying causes, the challenges faced during the journey, life after crossing borders, and the debates that surround this issue.
Exactly, Mark. We'll explore definitions, personal experiences, political arguments, and potential solutions. We aim to provide context and clarity. Throughout the conversation, we will share examples and personal stories so you can hear the human side behind the news headlines.
So, settle in with your favorite beverage, and let's dive deep into this topic together. We encourage you to take notes, pause if you need to, and ask questions if something isn't clear. Ready to start?
Absolutely. Let's get started. Let's begin by defining our topic. Mark, what exactly do we mean when we talk about illegal immigration?
That's a great starting point, Catherine. Illegal immigration occurs when individuals enter or remain in a country without having the proper legal permission. In the context of the USA, this could mean crossing the border without a valid visa or staying beyond the allowed time on a visa.
So, if a person enters the USA without a visa, or if they overstay their visa, they are considered illegal immigrants.
Exactly. The US has specific rules and laws regarding who can enter and stay in the country. If someone is here without the required documents or after their legal permission has expired, they are classified as an illegal immigrant.
That makes sense. I think it's important for our listeners to know that this term is strictly about the legality of one's stay. It's not a comment on the person's character, but rather on the documentation and legal process.
Right, Catherine. It's essential to understand that while the term illegal refers to the immigration status, the people involved are individuals who often have very complicated stories. The term itself is sometimes seen as pejorative, so in some conversations, people choose to say undocumented immigrants instead. We'll stick with our term today, but always remember the human side of this issue.
Yes, the language we use is important. It shapes how we view the people involved in this process. So, when we talk about illegal immigration, we are referring to the legal status of a person's entry or stay in a country, not necessarily their character or worth as individuals.
Absolutely. In addition, illegal immigration is not just a phenomenon in the USA, it happens in many countries. But today, we are focusing on the situation in the USA, where the laws and policies are very specific and sometimes subject to political debate.
Understanding the definition is the first step in unpacking the many layers of this subject. Let's now move on to why people might choose to take the risk of entering or staying in the USA illegally.
When we look at why people immigrate illegally, we must consider a range of factors. Often, people make this choice because they are fleeing dire circumstances in their home countries. For many, the decision is driven by the hope of finding a better life.
That's true, Mark. Many individuals who leave their home countries do so because they face extreme poverty, violence, or persecution. For some, the prospect of a safer and more prosperous future in the USA is too alluring to pass up, even if it means risking their lives in the process.
Yes, and one of the primary reasons is economic opportunity. In many parts of Central and South America, for example, the lack of jobs, low wages, and unstable economies push people to seek work abroad. The USA, despite its strict laws, is seen as a place where hard work can lead to a better future for people and their families.
I remember reading about families who have lost everything due to natural disasters or political instability. They feel that staying in their country is not an option because their lives are at constant risk. In many cases, they see illegal immigration as a last resort, a chance to escape from extreme hardship.
Exactly. There's also the aspect of reuniting with family members. Often, one family member might have moved to the USA legally or illegally, and the rest of the family feels the need to join them. The legal process to reunite with family can be long and complex, so illegal immigration might seem like the only viable option.
It's a complex mix of economic, social, and personal reasons. But we should also mention that some people are drawn by the idea of freedom and the belief that the USA offers more personal liberties than their home countries.
That's a good point, Catherine. The political climate in some countries can be very repressive. When people are subjected to constant surveillance, lack of freedom of speech, or political persecution, moving to the USA, where there is a strong tradition of individual rights, can be very appealing.
Yet, while the hope for a better life is a powerful motivator, the journey itself is fraught with dangers and challenges. We must remember that many of these people are taking enormous risks. Not only do they leave behind their families and communities, but they also often travel in unsafe conditions.
Yes, the journey itself can be extremely perilous. Many choose to travel through dangerous regions, sometimes crossing deserts or treacherous rivers. They often rely on smugglers who promise safe passage but can be untrustworthy and dangerous.
It's heartbreaking to think that so many people are forced to put their lives at risk simply to seek a chance at safety and a better future. This segment highlights the human element behind the statistics and legal definitions.
Catherine. And as we continue our conversation, we'll explore some of the specific challenges people face during their journey, as well as the emotional and physical toll of living with uncertainty once they arrive.
Now that we understand why people decide to leave their home countries, let's talk about the journey itself. Mark, can you describe what the journey to the USA typically involves?
Of course. Many individuals attempting to enter the USA illegally face a long and dangerous journey. For example, a significant number of people travel across the southern border, which they share with Mexico. This journey might involve trekking across vast deserts, crossing rivers like the Rio Grande, or even attempting to hide in vehicles.
That sounds incredibly dangerous. I imagine that the harsh desert conditions, extreme temperatures, and the risk of getting lost add to the danger.
They do, indeed. The deserts, with their scorching heat during the day and freezing temperatures at night, pose serious risks. Many have suffered from dehydration, heat stroke, or injuries due to the rough terrain. In addition, the journey can take days, if not weeks, during which time the travelers face not only natural challenges but also the constant fear of being caught.
Let's not forget the role of smugglers. I've heard that people often have to rely on coyotes to guide them across the border. How safe is that option?
It's very risky. While some smugglers might genuinely try to help, many are criminals who take advantage of vulnerable individuals. They charge high fees, and there have been cases where people are abandoned in the middle of nowhere or even exploited. Smugglers sometimes force their clients to take dangerous routes to avoid detection by Border Patrol agents.
I see. And what happens if someone gets caught during the journey?
If caught by immigration authorities, the consequences can be severe. In many cases, individuals are detained in centers where they await legal proceedings. The detention centers themselves have been subject to criticism because conditions can be harsh and the process lengthy. Some people are deported almost immediately, while others might spend months or even years in detention as their cases are reviewed.
It must be incredibly stressful to live under constant fear, not only during the journey, but also knowing that once you arrive, there's always a risk of being caught.
Absolutely. The psychological toll of such a journey is immense. Many people suffer from anxiety, depression, or trauma due to the hardships they encounter. The uncertainty of not knowing if you will ever see your loved ones again adds another layer of distress.
This shows that the decision to immigrate illegally is never taken lightly. It's a desperate choice made under extreme circumstances, and the risks involved are very real.
Indeed, Catherine. Understanding this journey is crucial because it sets the stage for the next part of our discussion: what life looks like for someone who has made it to the USA under these circumstances.
Once people manage to cross the border, their challenges do not end. Mark, could you explain what life is like for those who live in the USA without legal status?
Certainly, Catherine. Life as an illegal immigrant in the USA is often filled with uncertainty and hardship. Many find work in sectors that do not require legal documents. For instance, jobs in construction, agriculture, housekeeping, or even small restaurants are common. These jobs may provide a living, but they rarely offer any legal protection or benefits.
I imagine that working in such conditions, without being able to access proper healthcare or secure fair wages, must be extremely difficult. There is also the constant fear of being discovered by authorities.
Exactly. Without legal status, workers are vulnerable to exploitation. Employers may pay them less than the legal minimum wage or force them to work in unsafe conditions, knowing they cannot easily seek help. This makes the situation not just economically challenging but also emotionally draining. Living under the constant threat of deportation creates an atmosphere of anxiety.
And what about the families of these immigrants? I've read that children, even if they are born in the USA, can face a great deal of uncertainty if their parents do not have legal status.
Yes, that's another challenging aspect. In the USA, any child born on American soil automatically becomes a citizen, which is a right known as jus soli. However, this does not guarantee stability for the family. Parents, despite having children who are citizens, can still be deported. This creates heartbreaking scenarios where families can be split apart, with children left behind or facing the fear of losing their primary caregivers.
It's heartbreaking to imagine the stress and constant worry these families endure. The children might be citizens, but their home life is anything but secure. There is also the social isolation and lack of access to resources that many undocumented immigrants face.
Correct, Catherine. Many illegal immigrants live in communities that are hidden from mainstream society. They may avoid seeking medical care, legal assistance, or even education for fear of exposing their status. This isolation can lead to a feeling of being trapped, without the ability to improve their situation legally.
While many of these individuals work hard and contribute to the economy, they often live in the shadows. It's a life of uncertainty and hardship, which many of our listeners might not fully understand if they only hear statistics.
Exactly. That's why sharing personal stories and understanding the day-to-day struggles is so important. It humanizes the issue and reminds us that behind every number, there is a real person with hopes, dreams, and fears.
This conversation was eye-opening. Not only do we see the economic side of illegal immigration, but we also understand the human cost, the stress, fear, and isolation that many face daily.
Indeed. Now that we have a clearer picture of life on the inside, let's shift our focus to the political and legal debates that surround the topic. There are many different opinions and arguments out there, and it's important to look at them closely.
Illegal immigration is one of the most heated issues in U.S. politics. Mark, can you share some of the different viewpoints that are often expressed in political debates?
Certainly. On one side, some argue that illegal immigration puts a strain on the country's resources, takes jobs away from citizens, and undermines national security. They believe that strong border controls and strict enforcement are necessary to protect American workers and maintain the rule of law.
I've heard many politicians use these arguments. They say that if illegal immigrants take jobs or use public services, it harms the economy and increases competition for jobs. It's a viewpoint that focuses on the immediate impact on local communities.
Yes, that's one perspective. On the other hand, many argue that illegal immigrants contribute significantly to the economy. They work in essential sectors such as agriculture, construction, and service industries. These individuals often pay taxes, and their labor supports industries that many American citizens rely on.
It's a debate that is full of nuance. Some also argue that the legal immigration process is so slow and complicated that it forces people into illegal channels. This side suggests that a pathway to legal status or citizenship would be a more humane solution.
That's correct, Catherine. Many advocate for immigration reform that would allow people already living in the country to obtain legal status. They argue that creating more legal channels would not only be fairer but also strengthen the economy by bringing people out of the shadows.
And then some believe in the strictest measures, supporting policies that call for immediate deportation of all illegal immigrants, regardless of their circumstances. This is a very hardline stance that sometimes does not take into account the human stories we've been discussing.
Right. Such policies can be very controversial. They tend to polarize public opinion and often spark heated debates on the values of fairness, security, and human rights. Many of our listeners might find it useful to understand that these debates are not just political, they have real impacts on families and communities.
It's important to look at both sides. While one side stresses the need for security and adherence to the law, the other focuses on compassion, economic necessity, and reforming a system that many feel is outdated. There isn't a one-size-fits-all answer, and that's why the discussion continues.
Exactly. And as the political climate changes, the conversation around illegal immigration also evolves. New policies, court decisions, and public opinion shape the debate every year. For our listeners, understanding these dynamics helps build a complete picture of the issue.
It certainly does. This segment helps us appreciate the complexity of immigration laws and the challenges of creating policies that are both just and effective.
And it reminds us that behind the political rhetoric are real people, people who are trying to build better lives in the face of overwhelming odds.
After discussing the challenges and debates, let's move on to solutions. Mark, what are some of the proposals that experts and policymakers have suggested to address illegal immigration?
There are several ideas on the table. One proposal is to strengthen border security through more advanced technology, better infrastructure, and increased manpower. This is often suggested as a way to deter illegal crossings.
That approach focuses on prevention. However, some argue that building stronger physical barriers might not be enough. They say that without addressing the root causes in the immigrants' home countries, people will still try to cross.
Exactly. Another suggestion is immigration reform that creates more legal pathways for immigrants. This could include expanding visa programs, offering temporary work permits, and creating a clear pathway to citizenship for those who have already established lives in the USA.
That makes sense. If people have legal ways to work and live in the country, there would be less incentive to risk dangerous journeys. It would also mean that employers and local communities could benefit from knowing the status of the people they hire.
There are also proposals for guest worker programs, where immigrants are allowed to work for a certain period under legal status without having to become full citizens. Such programs can help meet labor shortages while keeping the process regulated.
And we shouldn't ignore the suggestion that improving conditions in the home countries themselves could reduce the pressure to leave. Many experts argue that international aid, economic development, and political stability initiatives might help address the root causes of illegal immigration.
That's a long-term solution, but it could make a significant difference. When people have a chance to live in safer, more prosperous conditions in their own country, the desperation to leave decreases. It's about creating sustainable change, not just temporary fixes.
All these ideas show that there is no single solution to illegal immigration. It's a multifaceted problem that requires a mix of better border security, legal reform, and international cooperation.
Absolutely. And while these proposals might sound promising, they also come with their own set of challenges. Every solution must balance security, fairness, and human rights. The debate continues as policymakers try to find that balance.
To truly understand the impact of illegal immigration, we must look at personal stories. Real-life experiences help us see beyond statistics. Mark, do you have any stories you'd like to share?
I do, Catherine. Let me tell you about Maria. Maria grew up in Guatemala, where violence and political instability made daily life a struggle. Facing threats from gangs and unable to find stable work, she decided to take a huge risk by crossing the border into the USA. Today, Maria works in a small restaurant. Every day, she carries the heavy burden of fear, and not just for herself, but for her family back home. Her story is one of bravery and desperation.
Maria's story is a powerful reminder of the human cost of these issues. And then there's Juan, from Mexico, who left his home country over a decade ago. Juan has worked in construction since arriving in the USA. He pays taxes and contributes to his community, yet he lives with the constant worry of deportation. Imagine working hard every day, and still feeling like you are living on borrowed time.
Exactly, Catherine. Stories like Juan's and Maria's show us that behind every debate about illegal immigration, there are individuals with hopes, dreams, and struggles. These personal experiences provide a human face to an issue often reduced to numbers and policies.
And there are many more stories out there, stories of families being separated, of people overcoming dangerous journeys, and of communities coming together to support one another despite the challenges. Listening to these stories can help us build empathy and a more nuanced understanding of the situation.
Yes, and they also highlight the resilience of the human spirit. Many immigrants, even under difficult circumstances, work tirelessly to contribute to their new communities. They learn new languages, adapt to new cultures, and build lives that are full of hope despite the odds.
It's important for us, as listeners and learners, to understand that these stories are not isolated incidents. They are part of a larger tapestry that reflects the challenges and triumphs of people seeking a better life.
Absolutely. When we hear these narratives, we start to see the issue of illegal immigration in a broader context, not just as a legal or political matter, but as a deeply human one.
Now that we have covered definitions, reasons, journeys, life experiences, and political debates, let's have a more interactive discussion. Mark, why do you think it is so hard for people to change their status once they are in the USA?
Well, Catherine, the legal process can be very slow and complicated. Many immigrants end up living in a kind of legal limbo, where they are not officially recognized but are not immediately deported either. This uncertainty can last for years, making it difficult for them to plan for the future or to invest in their community.
I can see how that would create a lot of stress. Without the ability to fully participate in society, like accessing healthcare, education, or even securing a stable job, life becomes even more challenging.
Exactly. This situation also creates challenges for local governments and communities. There is often a lack of trust between undocumented immigrants and law enforcement, which can affect community safety and cooperation.
It also makes it harder for employers and schools. They may struggle with language barriers, cultural differences, or simply not having the right legal framework to support these individuals. It's a cycle that can be very hard to break.
Right. And while some communities have come together to provide support networks and community centers, many immigrants still face isolation and fear. This is why understanding the personal side of this issue is so crucial.
I agree. As we listen and learn, it's important to remember that these discussions are not just academic, they affect real lives every day.
Let's take a moment to imagine some questions from our listeners. One common question we often hear is, what would happen if the USA provided a clear pathway to citizenship for illegal immigrants? How do you think that would change the situation, Catherine?
That's a thought-provoking question, Mark. On one hand, a clear pathway to citizenship could bring stability to millions of lives. It would allow people to come out of the shadows, fully participate in society, and contribute openly to the economy. On the other hand, some worry that it might encourage more illegal immigration if people believe that eventually, everyone will be given a chance.
True, the debate is very divided. Some experts argue that if managed correctly, legalizing those who are already here could help the country by reducing exploitation and increasing tax revenue. However, it would also require significant changes in the legal framework and considerable political will.
Exactly. It's a balancing act. The idea is to create a system that is both fair and effective. This means not only addressing the needs of those already here, but also ensuring that future immigration is managed in a way that supports the country's economy and security.
Another question we often hear is, how do these policies affect the children of illegal immigrants? The answer is complex. While children born in the USA are citizens by law, they can still face instability if their parent status is uncertain.
That's right, Mark. These children often have to navigate two worlds. At school, they are citizens, but at home, they live with the fear of family separation. It's an emotional burden that can affect their education and overall well-being.
These questions show that the issue of illegal immigration touches on many aspects of life, economics, law, human rights, and even education. Our listeners are not just learning English, they are also gaining a deeper understanding of a complex global issue.
Let's take a broader look at how illegal immigration impacts the country as a whole. Mark, in your opinion, what are some of the long-term effects of having such a large undocumented population in the USA?
There are several long-term effects, Catherine. Economically, many undocumented immigrants work in industries that are essential to the country's infrastructure. They help fill labor shortages, often in roles that American citizens are not willing to take due to the demanding nature of the work. However, without legal protection, these workers are vulnerable to exploitation.
Socially, having a significant undocumented population can create divisions in communities. There can be a lack of trust between residents and law enforcement, which might lead to less community cooperation in addressing local issues.
Absolutely. Moreover, there are cultural impacts. While immigration enriches society by bringing diverse cultures, languages, and traditions, it can also lead to challenges in integration. Schools, for instance, may need extra resources to support children who are learning English as a second language.
It shows that illegal immigration is not just a legal or economic issue, it touches every aspect of society. As communities evolve, finding ways to integrate and support all residents becomes essential for a cohesive society.
And that's why many of these discussions also include the idea of reform, not just for the sake of law enforcement, but to improve overall community life. When people feel safe, respected, and included, the whole society benefits.
Before we wrap up, let's take a moment to think about the future. Mark, where do you see the discussion on illegal immigration heading in the coming years?
I believe the discussion will continue to evolve as the political, economic, and social landscapes change. With advancements in technology and changes in global politics, countries like the USA might adopt new strategies to manage immigration. There is growing support for comprehensive reform that addresses both the humanitarian aspects and the security concerns of illegal immigration.
That sounds promising. As society progresses, it seems likely that we will see more balanced policies that try to bridge the gap between strict enforcement and compassionate reform.
Exactly. The hope is that future policies will be more inclusive, providing clear legal pathways while also addressing the root causes of migration. Education, international cooperation, and economic development in the immigrants' home countries could all play a role in reducing the pressures that drive illegal immigration.
It's a challenging issue, but one that offers an opportunity for growth and change, for both the host country and the countries of origin. When policies are made with empathy and foresight, they can lead to better outcomes for everyone involved.
I agree, Catherine. the future of immigration policy is not set in stone. It depends on our willingness to adapt, to learn from past mistakes, and to work together on solutions that respect human dignity and the rule of law.
As we come to the end of today's conversation, let's summarize what we have discussed. Illegal immigration is a complex issue with many layers. We explored its definition, the reasons behind it, the dangerous journeys people undertake, the struggles they face in the USA, and the heated political debates surrounding the topic.
We also looked at possible solutions and discussed ethical and future perspectives. Through our conversation, we've seen that illegal immigration is not just a matter of law, it's about human lives, aspirations, and the search for a better future. It reminds us that every statistic represents a person with a unique story.
That's right, Mark. Our goal with this podcast has been not only to help improve your English, but also to deepen your understanding of a very important and current issue. We hope you found our conversation enlightening, and that it encourages you to look at news and global issues with a more compassionate and thoughtful perspective.
Thank you for joining us today on Great English Podcast. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Great English Podcast. Please support us by joining membership for more exclusive content designed only for you, and we'll see you next time for another engaging conversation. We hope you learned something valuable about illegal immigration, and we look forward to exploring more topics with you in future episodes.
Until next time, remember that learning is not just about language, it's also about understanding the world around us. Stay curious, stay kind, and keep learning. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye, and thank you for listening.